Well, let me first say, George, that overall we have this huge crisis, the largest economic crisis since the Depression, the greatest health crisis since the pandemic. And unfortunately, the president's executive orders described in one word could be paltry, in three words, unworkable, weak, and far too narrow.
Let me just give you a chance first to respond to Senator Schumer. You saw him right there say that the president's proposals are paltry, weak, narrow, unworkable.
Well, look, I think that provides significant economic assistance, even though the numbers are coming in very strong. A good jobs number on Friday, declining unemployment. We've created over 9 million jobs in 3 months. That's a record. But there's still a lot of hardship out there. There's a lot of heartbreak out there. And the point that President Trump made yesterday is that on several occasions, we tried to get, for example, a compromise deal on the unemployment assistance, which ran out, the federal unemployment assistance. That's a key point. A second key point was the eviction moratorium. Because the Democrats rejected various compromises, at least twice, to my knowledge, President felt he had to take action, and it will be timely action, and it will be temporary action, to be sure, probably mostly out to the end of this year. But let's help those who still need help.
But Larry, in fact, the president doesn't extend
great progress, but we had to take action.
In fact, the president doesn't extend the federal eviction moratorium. I looked at the executive order. It doesn't do that. It simply directs HUD to find a way to help people and identify federal funds. It doesn't include extending the eviction moratorium.
Well, look, that's not entirely true. I mean, in there.
Well, it is true.
Secretary of Health, if any determination is made that there's a health threat of community spread due to evictions or forbearance due to coming on top of evictions, that they would take action. So that's clear, and I think that's exactly what the health secretary is going to do. We also are going to be working through other agencies to spend some money for example, rental assistance. And federally backed housing, whether it's single family or multifamily, if there's any forbearance or if landlords make a request, then there will be no eviction during that process. So it just says there's going to be a review. I can tell you, George, the intent of that is that the review will prevent any evictions. We've been fortunate so far, but this is a guardrail, and it will work out beautifully.
Okay, I understand that. You say that's the intent. Just to clarify, because I'm reading page 3 of it right here. It says such action may include encouraging and providing assistance to public housing authorities, affordable housing owners, landlords, and recipients of federal grant funds, and minimizing evictions and foreclosures. It doesn't talk about it extending the moratorium, but I want to move on to some other issues as well.
Yeah, let's move on, because you didn't really answer the question, and you're just sweeping this under the rug. And how did Larry Kudlow answer it when he specifically talked about how this would not prevent people from being evicted from their homes? There's no provision in there that actually does that. How did Larry Kudlow respond? He said,
well, look, that's not entirely true. I mean, in there.
Well, it is true.
That's not entirely true, but it's almost entirely true. It is. There is nothing in there for actual eviction moratoriums. It would direct housing. It would direct HUD to look into whether or not you're facing a hardship as a result of it. And then it would try to figure out how to distribute some funds to make sure that you stay in your house. And that is a nightmare of a process. You're going to be asking these tenants now to find out whether or not their landlords are also using federally backed mortgages. So to be clear, how this works is it would simply look at whether or not the landlord of this property has a federally backed mortgage in place, a Fannie or Freddie mortgage. How is this going to work? A landlord's going to put up a sign on the wall that says, hey, tenants, by the way, I have a federally backed mortgage, a Fannie and Freddie mortgage, and therefore you probably won't have to pay rent. How is a tenant to find out whether or not they have this access to these types of funds, or whether or not they'll be able to not pay their rent for a few months? Further, that just kicks the can down the street a little bit more, because if this is implemented, and chances are it won't be, then this just kicks the can down the street where you won't have to pay rent for a few more months. Big deal. You'll still have to pay rent. The reason that the Democrats wanted the $100 billion rental assistance in their HEROES Act is because it would actually pay the rent. So again, what happens when these individuals, in 2 months still don't have a job, and now have to pay an additional 2 months of rent that they don't have money to pay. This just pushes and prolongs the pain. The ban itself back in March under the CARES Act was a moratorium over 44 million individuals. But this executive order from the president would only cover a fraction of those people. And many people live in buildings with private mortgages or properties that are fully paid off. For instance, I'm a landlord. Most of my properties are fully paid off. And what does that mean? I could now just decide to, collect rent and evict anyone I want? No, we've had tenants that haven't been able to pay rent, and guess what? We've worked with them to make sure that they're not thrown out of the property and taken care of. And let's be clear, the only reason that the CARES Act worked is because state and local governments also layered on a level of moratoriums in addition to what the federal government was going to do. But for the most part, these things, if the state and local governments have already rolled them back, and they already have, then there's nothing there. And these federal protections are not enough to keep people in their homes. This is once again theatrics when you see the president out on the podium pretending like he's helping Americans and telling you that Democrats don't want it. He's full of hot air. This is nothing but political theatrics where he looks like he can ride in on his white horse. I've been saying it for weeks, that he's playing good cop, bad cop, and here's an opportunity for the president to roll in and pretend like he's going to save everyone. But when you start to peel the layers of the onion back even further, you get to realize there's nothing there. There's nothing there at all, and it's just going to make you cry. You ever cut an onion? Yeah, it makes you cry. For instance, as an example, 9.6 million people rent in Texas, an area that voted for Trump. Guess what? The state has no moratorium on evictions anymore, and they are allowed to evict with abandon in that state. That started under the Supreme Court about a month and a half ago. So people out without being able to pay their rent have no choice but to try to seek out homeless shelters right now. And guess what? Many of you have told me, I've seen the comments that you've left here on my channel, that you are now being kicked out of your home, and you've reached out to local homeless shelters and they've told you they're full. And of course, that's what we want right now, right? We want people huddled in homeless shelters during a virus pandemic right now. We're already seeing the trouble resurging right now in nursing homes and schools reopening and having to close again. We do not need people huddled together in homeless shelters simply because this president and this Congress cannot get its act together and pass some sort of rental assistance program. Again, look to the HEROES Act. There's already $100 billion set aside in there from Democrats. This is all political show right now. Make no mistake about it. Even Republican Senator Ben Sasse from Nebraska released a statement this weekend calling it ridiculous. He said the pen and phone theory of executive lawmaking is unconstitutional slop. S-L-O-P. He said under the Constitution, the President of the United States does not have this power. That power belongs to the American people acting through their members of Congress. Again, Republican Senator Ben Sasse. Thank you for subscribing to our channel and watching for our daily updates. Please smash that like button and turn on that little bell notification so you'll be notified as soon as we publish another video. Also, you can subscribe to our free Morning Invest newsletter. It's delivered to your inbox first thing every morning, totally free, so you can get the news that you can use first thing over your morning coffee. Go to morninginvest.com. And Grover has been biting me non-stop. Haven't you, buddy? Haven't you, buddy? All right, we'll see you later, everyone. Ow, 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 ow.